In June last year, shortly after the Republican nomination for president was clinched, USA Today published this long, sort of embarrassing report on the new Republican nominee. It was titled this, USA Today exclusive. Hundreds allege Donald Trump doesn't pay his bills. And then the subheading was, among those who say billionaire didn't pay, dishwashers, painters, waiters. USA Today reported in June. They basically had their reporters comb through legal documents and catalog all the people who the Republican presidential nominee had been accused of not paying over the course of his business life. And it wasn't just like other big-name real estate people. It was like contractors and subcontractors, plumbers, painters, dishwashers, waitresses, bartenders, employees at every level. Also, lawyers, his own lawyers. And that ends up being important. Over the course of his business career, according to what USA Today reporters were able to dig up through all these legal filings, in several instances, he retained law firms to represent him in these cases where he got sued because he'd allegedly stiffed his workers, right? So his plumbers or his dishwashers or somebody sue him because they say that Trump hasn't paid them what they own. In several instances, those same law firms ended up suing Donald Trump as well because they said he then didn't pay his legal bills after they represented him in cases where other people said he didn't pay them either. I can't say they weren't warned, right? Well, in 2008, that was a New York law firm who Trump had hired to help fight contractors over alleged mispayments. So Trump didn't pay his contractors, allegedly. He hired a law firm to represent him in that case. The law firm then, in turn, alleged that Trump didn't pay them either. They said Trump didn't pay them nearly $500,000 in legal fees. Him and that New York law firm, they ended up settling later on. 4 years later, it was a Virginia law firm. They ended up suing the Trump Organization for over $90,000 worth of allegedly unpaid legal fees that resulted in another settlement. Then it was an Atlantic City law firm, also accused Trump of skipping out on over $1 million in legal fees that he owed to that law firm in Atlantic City. They said that he didn't pay them. That history of Donald Trump having to settle out of court or being sued by law firms who says that Trump engaged them to represent him and then he didn't pay them when the bills came due, that ends up being a really interesting, relevant backstory to a fascinating news scoop from Yahoo's Michael Isikoff. Isikoff scoops today that top lawyers at least 4 major private law firms have been contacted by the White House about potentially representing the president in his legal woes. At least 4 major law firms turned down the opportunity to represent the president in this Trump-Russia investigation. We know, of course, that the president has selected a private attorney named Mark Kasowitz to represent him as his chief lawyer. But according to Isikoff's reporting today at Yahoo News, there have been attempts in recent weeks to entice other kind of brand name lawyers, high profile DC legal eagles, trying to get people to come join the president's legal team. Those efforts have proved fruitless. Quoting from Isikoff's report, the concerns were the guy won't pay and he won't listen. That's one lawyer close to the White House. Quote, other factors, the lawyer said, were that it would kill recruitment for the firms to be publicly associated with representing the polarizing president, and it would jeopardize the firm's relationships with other clients. You know, I think it's important in this story and in every story related to this very strange presidency to separate out what is truly new and unprecedented and what is actually sort of par for the course presidential behavior. And it's unavoidable. It's definitely true that in modern times, almost every president has hired outside legal counsel. Almost every modern president has relied on private lawyers to help him respond to whatever scandal that administration is facing. President Obama, I should mention, is an exception to that. President Obama had a private lawyer, but there was never a major scandal during his administration that required him to use that private counsel. But for most other modern presidents, there is somebody. I mean, during the Watergate scandal, President Nixon went through not one but 2 outside private lawyers. His first was a man named Charles Allen Wright. He was the preeminent constitutional lawyer of his time. Wright, however, was unsuccessful in his efforts to prevent Nixon from having to hand over the White House tapes. And so Nixon canned him, replaced him with another prominent lawyer named James St. Clair. St. Clair then defended the president's decision to withhold the White House tapes, defended it all the way up to the Supreme Court before they lost that case. During Iran-Contra, President Reagan, he retained Republican super lawyer Ted Olson as his private counsel. Ronald Reagan's successor, President George H.W. Bush, he actually hired Jimmy Carter's Attorney General, Griffin Bell, to be his private outside lawyer when the Iran-Contra issues followed him into his term as president. President Bill Clinton, he retained big-name lawyers David Kendall, Bob Bennett to represent him during the Monica Lewinsky affair. So presidents hire outside counsel. Presidents use outside lawyers when they've got scandals to deal with. Usually high-profile lawyers at high-profile law firms. Right? And those kinds of lawyers, those kinds of law firms usually line up to want to represent the president. No matter the scandal, it's representing the president of the United States, which is a big, prestigious deal, right? Except apparently when it comes to this president. President Trump being rebuffed by big law firms is not only an anomaly when it comes to recent presidential history, it also raises this very practical, immediate question of whether or not he's going to have the best possible defense. I mean, following tonight's reporting on the front page of the Washington Post, looks like he might need it more than ever. Is he going to get as good a defense as other presidents would get? Hold that thought. There's an answer.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.